What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
So I say we must clean the house of white America of racism. Americans who are in the white majority should be proud to stand up and be heard denouncing the sort of racist rhetoric we heard on that tape, so loudly and clearly denouncing it that our black fellow citizens can hear us. White racism may be black people's burden, but it's white people's problem. We must clean our house.
A little bit of investigative journalism here, and there's a thing, there's a lot of videos on here about Pakistan giving a loan to Germany in 1963. This one's here, it's a myth. All ones are taking it as if it was real, like Pakistan had learned to Germany. Now it's quite a strange story type of thing, because obviously, as we all know, you've got basically the EU Kalergi type of scenario going on, and obviously got a lot of Indians and Pakistanis coming into European nations. So this is quite an interesting story. It would actually make sense if they had. Of course, if it's Pakistan giving them the loan, that would be by proxy India, see? Because obviously Pakistan's just a sort of byproduct of India. So basically, if you're talking about them giving million pound dollars loans or whatever to Germany, they're having some influence within Europe. Right? Here's the thing, as you see, in the 63 you got your 666 code, and in the 120 million you got your 3 or 777 code. Right? Again, this may not be correct, but loan was part of a broader economic partnership begun in 1953. Pakistan supported Germany's reconstruction. It's a strange little story, especially when you see what obviously the influence of India, Pakistan, and all that part of the world in Europe now. Very strange. According to this, 260,000 Indians live in Germany. That's quite small compared to Britain. That's for sure. Where there's absolute millions. Right? But again, right, if you're talking about the EU, the EU obviously. Germany's basically the centre of the EU type of thing. Right? And so you've got Pakistani and Indian influence on the EU, because obviously when the EU took a hold in Europe, all of a sudden all the Indians came into Europe, in Pakistan. So it's a very strange relationship between the EU and India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. like that. As you see here, India's influence on the EU, multifaceted, encompassing political, economic and strategic dimensions. This would certainly seem like the case. Which again is quite strange, because why should India have any influence on the EU? It's other side of the world for a start. So why? partners in progress, how EU and India are shaping a new world. I would imagine that is certainly what it looks like, or new Europe. Of course, New World Order, as alluded to by George Bush famously, the New World Order, India at the head of it basically. And then countless more pages, see, loads of stories about India and EU basically, right? Again, right, I've shared this one before, right? Practical Idealism becomes a political type of slogan, right? First used by John Dewey and then adopted by Mahatma Gandhi, right? Ethical impediment to implement ideals of virtue or good. Now, it's funny how Gandhi, right, become known as the practical idealist and all this, and then of course Kulanov Kalergi has his book called Practical Idealism, right? So they're basically sharing the same philosophy. Basically, right, this ties in with the Indians as world teachers type of philosophy, right? Which is Vishwaguru, Indian civilizational pedagogy, where like India becomes a sort of father to the world, like wise teacher and example, of how to be and all this, right? And then the race of the future, right? The theoretical composite race, which will result from ongoing racial admixture. And basically the Kalergi compared it to the ancient Egyptian. So of course in your cultural stuff, you've got the idea of ancient Egypt. It's basically futuristic. The biblical thing about coming from Egypt. So coming from Egypt to return to Egypt, to actually build and create Egypt in European lands. Egypt, of course, isn't necessarily the Egypt that exists today as a country, in Africa, right? Because these biblical lands are different. They obviously name real physical countries after biblical lands, right? So you're not talking about the literal place Egypt. You're talking about a sort of biblical concept. So out of Egypt and then rebuild their own place, which is Egypt, type IJC. They go to these new lands and make Egypt, to recreate Egypt. So that's the sort of, grand and glorious vision type idea that's presented on one hand. This is the alternative type of theory of it. Not be the people of your continent, but a kind of subhumans, see? So in actual fact, what they're trying to do is create a subhuman race that is absolutely easily, to become slaves, to become slaves and servants. And that seems to be the case with India, like the people from the lower castes, right, seem to take to slavery and being servants, servitude, a lot easier than European races, that seems to be it. But the whole thing is to bring about a servant race that will obviously serve the upper class aristocracy, people and all that, so it's like, and how do you do that? You have money, use money, so it's basically money becomes God and the people become servants of the money, Yes, you have this John Dewey, right? Transforming education for democracy, right? So what their type of idea is to basically use education to dumb people down, right? And obviously ultimately make them serve the masters, the master people, or the master race, if you like. In fact, that was why they obviously created the German Nazi idea of being the master race. It was basically to deflect from who was truly intended to be the master race, using a type of reverse psychology, as obviously 1984 points out, double speak. So practice and idealism, practical idealism. Going back to the George Bush character, interesting, his character's called India. The previous one, the previous one who came up with a New World Order statement. Bush is basically the burning bush. Of course, is God called Moses to lead Israelites out of Egypt. So it's no coincidence you had George Bush talking about the New World Order. And this sort of concept was shared by Mikhail Gorbachev. So you're talking about all these type of Western or Eastern countries, obviously infiltrated by the same influence and bringing everything about into the same thing. Theory and progress, practical idealism again.